Hi there. I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story from. I want to know how far it's traveled. You'll never see your grandchildren again unless you give me $50,000 cash, Mom. And I mean it this time. Those were the exact words my daughter Sarah spoke to me last Tuesday morning, standing in my own kitchen, drinking coffee from the mug I'd bought her for Mother's Day. The same daughter I'd raised alone after her father died when she was 12. The same daughter I'd put through nursing school by working double shifts at the diner. The same daughter whose mortgage I'd helped with for 3 years running. But here's the thing, and this is where my story gets interesting. She had no idea I'd been recording our conversations for the past month. You see, at 73 years old, I might look like just another grandma who bakes cookies and knits scarves. But I spent 30 years working as a legal secretary, and I know exactly how to protect myself. Sarah thought she was dealing with a pushover. She thought her manipulation would work like it had for the past 2 years, keeping me from my precious grandchildren Emma, 8, and little Jake, 6, unless I opened my checkbook. She thought she held all the cards because she had custody of the kids. She was wrong. What Sarah didn't know was that I'd already contacted a family attorney. What she didn't know was that I'd been documenting every threat, every demand, every cruel word. What she didn't know was that in my state, grandparents have legal rights to visitation when it's in the children's best interest. And what she definitely didn't know was that I'd become friends with her neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, who'd been witnessing everything from her kitchen window for months. You see, when someone tries to use your love for your grandchildren as a weapon against you, when they turn your greatest joy into your deepest pain, something changes inside you. Something hardens. Something gets determined. I looked at Sarah that morning, this woman I'd sacrificed everything for, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I wasn't going to let her turn my golden years into a nightmare of extortion and emotional abuse. Okay, Sarah, I said calmly, pouring myself another cup of coffee. Let me think about it. She smiled that triumphant smile I'd grown to hate. I knew you'd see reason, Mom. I need the money by Friday. But what she heard as surrender was actually strategy. Because I'd learned something important in my 7 decades on this earth. Sometimes the strongest weapon you have is letting people underestimate you. The war for my grandchildren had begun, and Sarah had no idea what she was up against. Let me take you back to the beginning, so you understand how we got to this point. 2 years ago, I was living what I thought was a blessed life. I had my little house paid off, a comfortable retirement from my years at Davidson and Associates law firm, and most importantly, I was Grandma Lucy to Emma and Jake. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I'd pick them up from school. We'd come back to my house, and I'd help them with homework while fresh chocolate chip cookies baked in the oven. The smell would fill my kitchen, mixing with their laughter as they told me about their day. Emma would show me her drawings. She's incredibly artistic, just like her grandfather was. Jake would demonstrate his latest magic tricks, his little face so serious as he tried to perfect the sleight of hand. Weekends were ours, too. Sarah was busy with her nursing job at the hospital, pulling long shifts, and she seemed genuinely grateful for my help. Mom, you're a lifesaver, she'd say. I don't know what I'd do without you. I believed her. God help me, I believed every word. I'd take the kids to the park, to the library for story time, to that little ice cream shop on Maple Street, where they knew our order by heart. Vanilla with rainbow sprinkles for Emma, chocolate with extra whipped cream for Jake. I bought them clothes for school, paid for Emma's art classes, covered Jake's soccer fees. When Sarah mentioned her car was acting up, I gave her $3,000 for repairs without thinking twice. When she said the mortgage was tight that first time, I wrote a check for $2,500. Just until I get back on my feet. Mom, you know how grateful I am. The house always felt so empty when they weren't there. I'd catch myself setting 4 places at the dinner table instead of 1. I'd buy their favorite cereals out of habit, their preferred snacks. My entire world revolved around those precious moments with Emma and Jake. That's when I should have seen the pattern forming. It was subtle at first. Sarah would be a little short with me if I suggested an outing she hadn't approved. She'd make comments about how I was spoiling them if I bought them small gifts. She started insisting on knowing exactly what we did during our time together. "You need to ask me before taking them anywhere, Mom," she said one Thursday evening, her voice carrying an edge I hadn't heard before. "I'm their mother, not you." The word stung, but I told myself she was just tired from work stress. Single motherhood is hard. I knew that from experience. So I apologized and promised to check with her first. Looking back now, I can see how she was testing boundaries, seeing how much I'd bend, how much I'd accept to keep access to my grandchildren. Every small concession I made became the new normal. Every time I gave in to keep the peace, she pushed a little further. The financial requests became more frequent. "The kids need new winter coats, Mom. Could you help out?" Then it was school supplies, medical bills, groceries. Always for the children, always presented as urgent. But here's what I didn't notice at the time, and this is where I feel so foolish now. The kids started looking different when I picked them up. Not sick or neglected, but different. Emma's bright chattiness became subdued. Jake stopped showing me his magic tricks with the same enthusiasm. One afternoon, as I was braiding Emma's hair, she said something that should have been a red flag. "Mom," he says, "we're lucky you help us. Grandma, because she worked so hard for us." At the time, I thought it was sweet. A mother teaching her children gratitude. Now I realize it was conditioning, preparing them to see me as an obligation rather than family, as someone who owed them rather than someone who loved them. The signs were there. I just chose not to see them because seeing would have meant acknowledging that something was very, very wrong. The first real crack in my denial came 6 months ago, and it started with something as simple as a grocery receipt. I was cleaning out my purse. You know how we ladies accumulate everything in there. When I found a crumpled receipt from Whole Foods, $247.83 for organic groceries, premium cuts of meat, expensive wines. The date was from last Tuesday, the same day Sarah called asking for money for basic groceries for the kids. My hands started shaking as I stared at that receipt. I remember that call clearly because I'd been in the middle of my own grocery shopping at Walmart, carefully comparing prices like I always do on my fixed income. I'd immediately transferred $200 to her account, feeling guilty that I was buying store-brand cereal while asking her to wait. But this receipt, this was from 2 hours after our conversation. This was Sarah buying luxuries with money I'd sent for necessities. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I started paying attention, really paying attention. I began keeping a notebook, writing down every request of money, every amount I sent, every reason she gave. The pattern that emerged made my stomach turn. In 6 months, I'd given Sarah over $12,000. For car repairs that happened twice to the same car. For medical bills that insurance should have covered. For emergencies that seemed to occur with suspicious regularity. Then I started noticing other things. When I picked up the kids, I glanced around more carefully. Sarah's apartment didn't look like the home of someone struggling financially. There was a new 65-inch TV in the living room. Designer purses hanging by the door. Emma mentioned a vacation to Florida that Sarah apparently couldn't afford to include Grandma in, even though I'd helped with expenses. The real breakthrough came when I ran into Janet Morrison at the pharmacy. Janet works at the bank where I've done business for 30 years. "Lucy," she called out warmly, "I was just thinking about you. Your daughter was in yesterday making a deposit. Quite a large one, too. You must be so proud of how well she's doing." My smile fell frozen on my face. Oh, yes, Sarah's always been responsible with money. But inside, my mind was racing. Large deposits? Sarah had literally called me 2 days before, cry about how she might not make rent. That afternoon, I did something that went against every instinct I had as a trusting mother. I drove by Sarah's apartment complex at different times of day. I watched, I observed, I documented. And you, what would you do in this person's place? I would love to hear your opinion. So please share it with me in the comments. What I saw broke my heart into pieces. Sarah's lifestyle didn't match her sob stories at all. I watched her leave for dinner dates at expensive restaurants, the same one she claimed she couldn't afford. I saw her come home with shopping bags from high-end stores. I even witnessed her throwing what looked like a small party on a Tuesday night with catered food and several bottles of wine. But the worst discovery came when I was watching from my car on a Thursday evening. I told Sarah I wasn't feeling well and couldn't take the kids that day, a lie I still feel guilty about. I wanted to see what she actually did when she claimed she had to work late. At 6 p.m., Sarah emerged from her apartment dressed to the nines. Designer dress, expensive heels, professional hair, and makeup. She got into a car I'd never seen before, a shiny black BMW with temporary plates. She wasn't going to work. She was going on a date. And my grandchildren were inside, probably eating whatever leftovers were in the fridge, while their mother used my money to fund her social life. I sat in that car for 10 minutes, crying harder than I had since my husband's funeral. Not just from hurt, but from anger. Not just from betrayal, but from determination. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to find out exactly how deep this deception went, and then I was going to do something about it. I started with the one place that never lies, the financial records. The truth, when it finally came out, was so much worse than anything I could have imagined. It started when I called my old friend Margaret, who still works part-time as a bookkeeper. Maggie, I said, I need to understand something about money transfers. Hypothetically, if someone was receiving money from multiple sources, would there be a way to track that? Margaret knew me well enough to hear the pain in my voice. Lucy, honey, what's going on? So I told her everything, the constant request for money, the grocery receipt, the observations I'd made. When I finished, there was a long silence on the phone. Lucy, Margaret said slowly, I think you need to talk to my nephew David. He's a private investigator now. Retired police detective. If there's something to find, he'll find it. 3 days later, I was sitting across from David Chun in a coffee shop downtown, feeling like I was betraying my own daughter. David was kind but thorough, asking questions I didn't want to answer but knew I needed to. Mrs. Patterson, he said gently, I need you to understand that sometimes these investigations reveal things we don't want to know. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Emma's sad eyes, about Jake's diminishing enthusiasm, about the empty feeling in my chest every time Sarah hung up on me after getting what she wanted. I'm prepared, I said. David's investigation took 2 weeks. 2 weeks during which I went through the motions of normal life, while feeling like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to fall. When he called me back to his office, I knew from his expression that the news was bad. Mrs. Patterson, I need to show you some things, but I want you to know we can stop at any time if this becomes too overwhelming. He opened a folder and spread documents across his desk like he was laying out evidence for a jury. Bank statements, credit reports, social media screenshots, phone records. Your daughter has been receiving financial support from 4 different sources. David said quietly, You've given her $12,347 over the past 6 months. Her ex-husband has been sending child support payments of $800 monthly, which she told him were voluntary contributions, since he's behind on court-ordered payments. He isn't behind. Her current boyfriend, Marcus Williams, has been paying her rent for the past 4 months, believing she's a struggling single mother. My hands went numb. For sources. And there's more. David pulled out printed screenshots from social media. She's been posting on Facebook about her financial struggles, asking for help from church friends and acquaintances. I've documented at least 6 different people who've sent her money through various apps. The photos showed my daughter at expensive restaurants, on weekend trips, wearing clothes that cost more than my monthly grocery budget, all while telling everyone in her life that she was barely surviving. But the worst was yet to come. Mrs. Patterson, I need to tell you something else. About the children. My heart stopped. What about them? David pulled out another set of documents. Your daughter's been telling different people different stories about why they can't see the children. She told her ex-husband that you're trying to turn the kids against him, so he's limited his visits. She told your sister-in-law Ruth that you've been having health problems and the kids are too much for you. She told the boyfriend that you're unreliable and sometimes forget to pick them up. The room started spinning. That's not true. None of that is true. I know. I also know that she's been using the children's emotional needs as leverage with everyone. With you, she threatens to cut off access. With the ex-husband, she claims they need therapy because of his absence. With the boyfriend, she says they need stability he can provide. David leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. Mrs. Patterson, your daughter isn't just taking advantage of your generosity. She's running a sophisticated emotional manipulation scheme, using those children as both the excuse and the weapon. And from what I can tell, this has been going on for almost 2 years. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't process the magnitude of the betrayal. There's one more thing, David said softly. I think you should know that the children have been asking their teachers about you. Emma's teacher mentioned in a parent conference that Emma talks about missing her grandmother and not understanding why they can't see you as much anymore. That's when I broke down completely, not just crying, but sobbing with a grief so deep it felt like it was tearing me apart from inside. My daughter, the little girl I protected and sacrificed for, wasn't just stealing my money. She was stealing my relationship with my grandchildren. She was poisoning their minds, manipulating their love, using them as pawns in a game I didn't even know we were playing. But as I sat there in David's office, surrounded by the evidence of my daughter's betrayal, something else began to grow alongside the grief. Something harder and more determined than anything I'd ever felt before. Sarah thought she was clever. She thought she'd found the perfect victims in a lonely old woman and 2 innocent children. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. You know what they say about the fury of a woman scorned? Well, let me tell you about the fury of a grandmother betrayed. It's colder, more calculated, and infinitely more patient. The morning after my meeting with David, I woke up feeling different. The crushing sadness was still there, but it was overlaid with something I hadn't felt in years, a sense of purpose. For too long, I'd been reactive, always responding to Sarah's demands and manipulations. Now it was time to take control. I started with what I knew best, organization and documentation. 30 years as a legal secretary had taught me that cases are won with paperwork, not emotion. I converted my spare bedroom into what I privately call my war room. I bought a large bulletin board, color pens, file folders, and a new notebook dedicated solely to this project. Every interaction with Sarah from the past 2 years got documented. Every money transfer got a file with the reason she'd given, the actual amount, and what I could prove about how it was really spent. David's investigation materials were organized chronologically. I even started a timeline on the wall, marking every significant event in red ink. But here's what Sarah didn't know about her old mother. I had allies she'd never considered. First, I reached out to Mrs. Rodriguez, Sarah's neighbor. Maria, I said during one of our coffee visits, I need to ask you something, and I hope you'll be honest with me. Have you noticed anything unusual about how Sarah treats the children? Maria's face grew troubled. Lucy, I've been wanting to talk to someone about this for months. The children, they seem different lately. Sadder. And Sarah, she paused, choosing her words carefully. Sarah says things about you when she thinks no one is listening. Mean things. About how you're trying to control her life and spoil the children. I felt that familiar stab of pain, but I pushed it aside. Would you be willing to write down what you've observed? Dates and times, if you remember them? Maria nodded firmly. That woman doesn't deserve those beautiful children. Or you. Next, I contacted Ruth, my sister-in-law. Ruth, I know Sarah told you I've been having health problems and can't handle the kids anymore. That's not true. I think we need to compare notes about what Sarah's been telling all of us. The conversation that followed was eye-opening. Sarah had been playing us against each other for months, telling each family member that the others were causing problems or couldn't be trusted with the children. But my most important ally turned out to be someone I'd never expected, Marcus Williams, Sarah's boyfriend. I found his contact information in David's report and made a decision that felt incredibly risky. I called him. Mr. Williams, this is Lucy Patterson, Sarah's mother. I believe we need to talk. The conversation was awkward at first. He clearly thought I was going to cause problems with their relationship. But when I started sharing what I discovered, his tone changed completely. Wait, he said. She told me you were demanding money from her constantly. She said you were threatening to turn the kids against me if she didn't choose between us. By the end of our 2-hour conversation, Marcus was as angry as I was. Mrs. Patterson, she's been lying to both of us. I've been paying her rent because she said you cut off all financial help and she couldn't afford housing for the children. Mr. Williams, I said carefully, how would you feel about helping me document the truth? That's when my plan really began to take shape. I realized that Sarah's greatest weakness was also her greatest strength. She'd been so successful at manipulating all of us separately that she'd never considered what would happen if we started talking to each other. I spent the next 2 weeks orchestrating something Sarah never saw coming. I was going to use her own tactics against her, but with one crucial difference. I was going to tell the truth. David helped me understand the legal requirements for recording conversations in our state. I bought a small digital recorder and practiced using it until I could operate it without thinking. I researched grandparents' rights laws and found an attorney who specialized in family custody cases. Most importantly, I planned the perfect trap. I called Sarah and told her I wanted to have a family meeting to discuss our financial arrangement and what's best for the children going forward. I suggested we meet at my house on a Sunday afternoon, neutral territory, or so she'd think. What Sarah didn't know was that I'd also invited Ruth and Marcus. What she didn't know was that Mrs. Rodriguez would be in her kitchen, positioned where she could see and hear everything through our adjoining yards. What she didn't know was that David would be parked across the street with recording equipment as backup. And what she definitely didn't know was that I'd spent the past week practicing my performance. Because sometimes, to catch a manipulator, you have to out-manipulate them. Sarah thought she was coming to collect another check and reassert her control over me. Instead, she was walking into a carefully planned confrontation that would expose every lie she told and every person she betrayed. The stage was set. The evidence was compiled. The allies were positioned. All that was left was for Sarah to hang herself with her own words. Sunday, March 15th, 2:30 p.m. I'll remember that moment for the rest of my life. Not because of what happened, but because of how calm I felt when it finally began. Sarah arrived exactly on time, looking confident and slightly impatient. She was dressed casually but expensively. Designer jeans that probably cost more than my monthly utilities, a handbag I recognized from the high-end boutique downtown. She hugged me briefly, that perfunctory embrace I'd grown to recognize as performance rather than affection. So, Mom, what's this about? I hope you're not going to make this complicated. You know how much I appreciate everything you do for us. I led her to the living room, where I'd set up comfortable seating, and put out coffee and cookies, the same chocolate chip recipe I'd made for her as a child. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sarah, honey, I've been thinking a lot about our family situation, about the money I've been giving you, about my relationship with Emma and Jake, about what's best for everyone involved. She settled back in her chair, already reaching for her phone, probably calculating how much she could ask for this time. I'm glad you're being reasonable, Mom. The kids really need. Actually, I interrupted gently. Before we talk about what the kids need, I'd like to understand something. Could you help me with some dates and amounts? I'm trying to organize my finances for tax purposes. For the next 20 minutes, I walked Sarah through every financial request from the past 6 months. I asked innocent questions about where the money went, expressed concern about her struggles, praised her for working so hard as a single mother. And with each question, Sarah dug herself deeper into the web of lies she created. Oh, that car repair is expensive, but you know how it is. You can't risk breaking down when you've got kids to transport, she said about the $3,000 I'd given her in January. Of course, dear. And remind me which shop did the work. I might need a reliable mechanic myself. I watched her face as she scrambled to invent details about a repair that never happened. Her tells were obvious once I knew to look for them. The slight pause, the upward glance, the way she touched her earring when she lied. Then Ruth arrived. Sarah's face went through a fascinating series of expressions when my sister-in-law walked in. Surprise and annoyance, then forced pleasantness. Ruth was surprised. Mom didn't mention you were coming. I asked her to join us, I said calmly. Since this is about family finances and the children's well-being, I thought we should all be on the same page. Ruth settled into her chair with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Sarah, I'm so glad we can finally talk openly. I've been worried about you. Lucy mentioned you've been struggling financially, but when I tried to help, you seemed resistant. I watched Sarah's composure begin to crack as Ruth shared her version of their recent conversations. The stories didn't match, not even close. That's not exactly what I said. Ruth, there must be some misunderstanding. Perhaps, Ruth agreed pleasantly. That's why it's good we're all here to clear things up. The doorbell rang again. Sarah looked confused, and for the first time, slightly worried. Expecting someone else, Mom? Actually, yes. I got up to answer the door, my heart pounding but my voice steady. I asked Marcus to join us too. Since he's part of the children's lives now, I thought he should understand the family dynamics. The look on Sarah's face when Marcus walked in was worth every sleepless night I'd endured over the past months. Pure, unadulterated panic. Marcus? What are you? Why are you here? Marcus looked at her with an expression I'd never seen before, disappointment mixed with disgust. Sarah, your mother and I have had some very interesting conversations lately. I think it's time we all heard the same story. For the next hour, we systematically dismantled every lie Sarah had told. Marcus shared what she'd told him about me being controlling and demanding money. Ruth talked about being told that I was too sick and unreliable to care for the children. I produced David's investigation results, bank statements, social media screenshots. Sarah tried to maintain her composure at first, then became defensive, then angry. You've all been conspiring against me. Mom, how could you spy on your own daughter? The same way you could lie to your own mother. I replied quietly. The same way you could use my love for my grandchildren to manipulate me. The same way you could poison Emma and Jake against the people who love them most. That's when Sarah made the mistake I've been waiting for. In her anger and panic, she dropped the manipulative mask completely. Fine. You want the truth? You're all pathetic. Mom, you're a lonely old woman who has nothing better to do than throw money at people to make them love you. Ruth, you're a bitter spinster who never had kids of your own, so you try to interfere with mine. And Marcus, she turned in with real venom. You're a middle-aged loser who's so desperate for a family that you'll pay for one. The silence in my living room was deafening. And you know what else? Sarah continued, too angry to stop. Those kids are better off without all of you. Emma's too sensitive anyway, always crying about missing Grandma. And Jake would be fine if everyone stopped filling his head with ideas about magic tricks and nonsense. She stood up, grabbing her purse. I don't need any of you. I can find plenty of other people who'll help me and actually appreciate it. As she stormed toward the door, I called out quietly, Sarah. She turned, probably expecting me to beg her to stay, to apologize, to offer more money to make peace. Instead, I held up the small digital recorder I'd had running throughout our entire conversation. You should know that everything you've said today has been recorded, and also that Mrs. Rodriguez has been listening from her kitchen since you've been so loud, and that there's a private investigator parked across the street who's documented your entire performance. Sarah's face went white. You can't, that's illegal. Actually, it's not. I checked. And Sarah? I stood up, feeling stronger than I had in months. You're right about one thing. I am going to throw money at this problem, but not at you, at lawyers, at investigators, at anyone who can help me get legal visitation rights with my grandchildren. You can't take them from me. I'm not trying to take them from you. I'm trying to save them from you. Sarah left without another word, slamming my door so hard that Mrs. Rodriguez later told me it rattled her windows. But I wasn't done yet. This was just the beginning. The week after our family meeting was like watching dominoes fall in slow motion. Each consequence led to another. Each revelation opened up new problems for Sarah, and each day brought me closer to my ultimate goal, protecting my grandchildren. David called me Monday morning. Mrs. Patterson, I thought you should know that your daughter has been very active since yesterday. She's made 17 phone calls to various family members and friends, apparently trying to do damage control. Let me guess, I'm the villain in every version? Pretty much. But here's the interesting thing. Some people aren't buying anymore. Your cousin Janet called me directly. Apparently, Sarah tried to get money from her last night, claiming you cut her off completely and she couldn't afford groceries for the kids. I felt that familiar mix of anger and sadness. Even after being exposed, Sarah was still trying to manipulate people. What did Janet do? She hung up and called your sister-in-law Ruth to compare stories. The family network is talking to each other now. Lucy, Sarah's web of lies is unraveling fast. Tuesday brought the first real confrontation. Sarah showed up at my door at 8 a.m., looking haggard and desperate. Gone was the composed manipulator from Sunday. This was a woman who was losing control of her carefully constructed world. Mom, we need to talk. Really talk this time. I let her in, but I kept the recorder running. Trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired. I know you're angry, Sarah began, but you have to understand the pressure I'm under. Being a single mother, working full-time, try to provide for 2 kids. Sometimes I don't explain things well. It was fascinating to watch her try to rebuild her narrative in real time. She was attempting to walk back Sunday's outburst without actually apologizing or admitting wrongdoing. Sarah, I said quietly, I've heard your explanations before. Multiple versions of them. What I need now isn't more words. It's action. I want to see my grandchildren. Her face hardened. That's not going to happen, Mom. Not after what you did Sunday. Not after you recorded me and brought strangers into our family business. Marcus isn't a stranger. You've been dating him for 8 months. Ruth isn't a stranger. She's been part of this family longer than you've been alive. You ambushed me. I gave you an opportunity to tell the truth. You chose to lie instead, just like you've been lying for 2 years. That's when Sarah played what she thought was her trump card. Fine. If that's how you want it, you'll never see Emma and Jake again. I mean it this time, Mom. I'm done with your manipulation and interference. I looked at this woman, my daughter, whom I'd loved and sacrificed for, and felt something I'd never experienced before. Complete emotional detachment. The threat that had controlled me for so long suddenly had no power. Sarah, I said calmly, I've already filed for grandparent visitation rights. I have documentation of your financial fraud, evidence of your manipulation tactics, and witness statements about your behavior. You don't get to make that decision anymore. The color drained from her face. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Wednesday brought news I've been hoping for. My attorney, Jennifer Walsh, called with an update. Lucy, I've reviewed all your documentation, and we have a very strong case. Your daughter's pattern of using the children as emotional weapons, combined with her financial manipulation tactics, creates a clear picture of someone who's put her own interests above the children's well-being. What happens next? We file a motion for court-ordered mediation first. Many judges prefer to keep these matters out of formal litigation, if possible. But Lucy, I need you to prepare yourself. Sarah is likely to get desperate. Desperate people make desperate choices. Jennifer was right. Thursday evening. Sarah called me crying hysterically. Mom, I'm so sorry. I know I said things I didn't mean. I know I've made mistakes. But please don't take me to court. Please don't try to take my children away from me. For a moment, hearing my little girl cry, my heart wanted to soften. 30 years of maternal instinct don't disappear overnight. But then I remembered Emma's sad eyes, Jake's diminishing enthusiasm, the recording of Sarah calling them burdens and saying they were better off without people who love them. Sarah, I'm not trying to take the children away from you. I'm trying to ensure they have access to their entire family. But if you take me to court, they might take the kids away completely. Social services might get involved. And there it was, the real fear. Sarah wasn't worried about the children's well-being or our relationship. She was worried about losing her meal tickets, her leverage, her sources of sympathy and financial support. Then I suggest you start putting their needs first, I said quietly. Friday brought the most heartbreaking development yet. Emma's teacher, Mrs. Henderson, called me directly. Mrs. Patterson? I hope you don't mind me reaching out, but Emma has been very upset at school lately. She keeps asking why she can't see you anymore, and when I suggested she ask her mother, Emma said she's not allowed to talk about you at home. My hand started shaking. What exactly did she say? She said her mommy told her that talking about Grandma makes everyone sad, so it's better not to mention you. But Lucy, Emma talks about you constantly anyway. About cooking with you, about the stories you tell, about missing you. That little girl loves you so much. I had to put the phone down and compose myself before I could continue the conversation. Mrs. Henderson, there's something you should know about our family situation. By Friday evening, I had witness statements from Emma's teacher, Jake's soccer coach, and 3 neighbors who'd observed Sarah's behavior. The picture they painted was of a woman who used her children's emotions as currency and their relationships as weapons. But I also had something else, a growing sense of peace. For the first time in 2 years, I wasn't reacting to Sarah's manipulation. I wasn't scrambling to meet her demands or walking on eggshells to maintain access to my grandchildren. I was fighting back, and I was going to win. The mediation hearing was scheduled for a cold Tuesday morning in March, exactly 6 weeks after that devastating Sunday confrontation in my living room. I woke up that morning feeling something I hadn't experienced in years, complete clarity about who I was and what I deserved. Jennifer picked me up at 8:30 a.m. You ready for this, Lucy? I've been ready for 2 years. I replied. I just didn't know it yet. The Family Mediation Center was a neutral, beige building that smelled like coffee and anxiety. Sarah was already there with her attorney, a young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She was dressed conservatively, playing the role of struggling single mother, but I could see the panic in her eyes when she spotted me. The mediator, Dr. Patricia Vance, was a gray-haired woman with kind but sharp eyes. She'd clearly seen every family dynamic imaginable, and nothing about our situation seemed to surprise her. Mrs. Patterson, she began, addressing me first, you're seeking court-ordered visitation with your grandchildren. Can you explain why you feel this legal intervention is necessary? For the next hour, I presented my case methodically. The financial manipulation, documented with bank statements and receipts. The emotional blackmail, supported by recordings and witness testimonials. The isolation tactics, corroborated by family members and school officials. I watched Sarah's lawyer take notes with increasingly worried expressions as Jennifer laid out evidence that painted a clear picture of systematic manipulation and emotional abuse. Then it was Sarah's turn. Your Honor, she began, then caught herself. Dr. Vance, my mother is a wonderful grandmother, but she's been trying to control my parenting decisions and undermine my authority with the children. Dr. Vance looked at her expectantly. Can you provide specific examples? What followed was 20 minutes of Sarah digging her own grave. She complained about me spoiling the children with art supplies and books. She described feeling pressured to accept my financial help, even though her phone records showed her initiating every single request. She claimed I was confusing Emma and Jake by teaching them outdated values. What kind of outdated values? Dr. Vance asked. Like expecting people to keep their promises, or thinking that families should help each other without expecting anything in return. The children need to understand that relationships are transactional. I saw Jennifer suppress a smile. Even Sarah's own lawyer looked uncomfortable. Dr. Vance spent the next 30 minutes reviewing the documentation. Bank records showing the $12,000 plus I'd given Sarah under false pretenses. The recordings of her disparaging the children and admitting her manipulation tactics. Witness statement from neighbors, teachers, and Marcus about Sarah's pattern of lies. Finally, Dr. Vance looked up. Ms. Patterson. She addressed Sarah directly. The evidence presented here suggests a concerning pattern of using your children as emotional leverage while simultaneously taking financial advantage of your mother's love for them. This behavior is not in the children's best interests. Sarah started to protest, but Dr. Vance held up a hand. Mrs. Patterson, she turned to me, you've demonstrated a genuine concern for your grandchildren's well-being and a consistent pattern of supporting their needs, even when being manipulated to do so. However, I'm also concerned about the level of conflict in this family dynamic. My heart started sinking. Was she going to deny my petition? Therefore, I'm recommending the following arrangement. Mrs. Patterson will have court-ordered visitation with Emma and Jake every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. and every other Saturday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. These visits are not contingent on Ms. Patterson's financial contributions to the household, nor can they be canceled or modified without court approval. Sarah's face went white. You can't do that. I can and I am. Furthermore, I'm ordering that both parties attend family counseling to address the communication issues and manipulation tactics that have damaged this family's relationships. Dr. Vance looked directly at Sarah. Ms. Patterson, I want to be very clear about something. If you attempt to poison your children against their grandmother, if you use them as weapons in this dispute, or if you interfere with a court-ordered visitation in any way, I will recommend that this case be escalated to family court for a full custody review. Do you understand? Sarah nodded mutely, tears streaming down her face. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage at losing control. The best part came 3 days later, on my first court-ordered visit with Emma and Jake. I picked them up at exactly 3 p.m. as ordered. Emma ran to my car like she hadn't seen me in years, instead of just weeks. Grandma Lucy, Mommy said we get to see you every Tuesday and Thursday now. Jake bounced in his booster seat. And some Saturdays, too. Can we make cookies today? As we drove to my house, Emma chatted about school, about her art projects, about the story she was writing about a brave grandmother who fought dragons. Jake showed me 3 new magic tricks he'd learned from YouTube videos. They seemed lighter somehow, more like the children I remembered from before Sarah's manipulation campaign began. That evening, as I helped with homework and fresh cookies baked in the oven, I realized something profound had shifted, not just in my relationship with Sarah or in my legal stand with the children, but in how I saw myself. For 2 years, I'd been living as a victim, reacting to Sarah's demands, walking on eggshells, accepting crumbs of time with my grandchildren, as if I should be grateful for whatever access she allowed. Now I was living as someone who knew her worth, someone who refused to be manipulated, someone who fought for what mattered, even when it was difficult and painful. 3 months later, I got a call that surprised me. It was Marcus. Mrs. Patterson? I want to let you know that Sarah and I broke up last week. I'm sorry to hear that, Marcus. Are you okay? Actually, I'm relieved. After everything that happened with the mediation, I started seeing patterns in how she treated me too. The constant financial requests, the way she played victim whenever I questioned anything, how she'd use the kids' needs to manipulate my emotions. He paused. I also wanted to thank you. Watching you stand up to her, seeing you fight for those children, it showed me that I didn't have to accept being treated that way either. 6 months after the mediation, my relationship with Emma and Jake was stronger than ever. They spent their court-ordered time with me, but more importantly, they seemed happier and more confident overall. Emma's teacher reported that she was participating more in class and seemed less anxious. Jake had joined the school's magic club and was performing in their upcoming talent show. Sarah and I barely spoke beyond scheduling logistics, but that was fine with me. Our family counseling sessions were tense but productive. She was learning, slowly and reluctantly, that her manipulation tactics no longer worked on me. The financial request stopped completely after I made it clear that any future help would be contingent on her honesty and would go directly to verified expenses for children. Funny how quickly her emergencies disappeared when she couldn't profit from them. If you like my story, you can support me by making a donation so I can write more stories. Thank you in advance. For more life stories like this, like the video and subscribe to my channel. There are many other stories waiting for you, but the most important change was in me. I discovered something I'd forgotten in my years of widowhood and lonely grandmotherhood. I had power, not the power to control other people, but the power to refuse to be controlled, the power to demand respect, the power to fight for what mattered. 1 year later, I was babysitting Emma and Jake on a Saturday afternoon when Emma looked up from her art project. Grandma Lucy, why did you and Mommy have to go to court? I thought carefully about how to answer. These children have been through enough adult drama. Sometimes, sweetheart, when people disagree about something important, they need help from other grown-ups to figure out what's fair. I just want to make sure I could keep being your grandma, no matter what. Emma nodded solemnly, then smiled. Well, I'm glad you did. I miss you a lot when we couldn't see you very much. Jake looked up from his homework. Me too, Grandma. And guess what? I learned a new magic trick where I make sad things disappear. As I watched him perform his little trick, making a frown drawn on paper vanish with a flourish, I realized he was right. The sadness, the fear, the feeling of powerlessness, all of it had disappeared. What remained was love, respect, and the unshakable knowledge that I would never again allow anyone to use my love as a weapon against me. Some people might say I was too harsh with Sarah, that I should have tried harder to work things out privately. But you know what I learned? Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's harmful behavior. Sometimes protecting yourself is the same thing as protecting the people you love most. Emma and Jake needed to see that their grandmother was strong enough to fight for them. They needed to learn that love doesn't require you to accept mistreatment. They needed to understand that family relationships should be based on mutual respect, not manipulation and control. Today, as I write this story, Emma is working on a painting in my kitchen while Jake practices card tricks at my dining room table. They're here because a court order says they should be, but they're happy to be here because our relationship is built on genuine love and respect. Sarah still tries her old tactics occasionally, testing boundaries, looking for weaknesses, hoping I'll go back to being the pushover grandmother she could manipulate. But that woman doesn't exist anymore. In her place is someone stronger, wiser, and infinitely more dangerous to those who would try to exploit her love. I am Grandma Lucy, and I am nobody's victim. And to any grandmother, grandfather, or family member who's reading this and recognizing their own story in mine, remember this. Your love is precious. Your time is valuable. Your relationship with your grandchildren matters. Don't let anyone use that love as a weapon against you. Don't accept crumbs when you deserve the whole meal. And don't ever let someone convince you that being manipulated is the same thing as being loved. You have more power than you know. Sometimes you just have to be brave enough to use it. The end. Thank you for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, it's never too late to stop being a victim and start being a warrior.